so desperately wants to be on the West Coast, that the team for him would be Baltimore. That it seems like it's not.
Coach doesn't like it.
Why do
you not like it? Because that could take away from their
even if they're a running team.
Every
even
year
a running
we talk
team.
about sending receivers to Baltimore.
I know.
Every year they draft one,
they
get one, and every year that receiver within the season's like,
right. But what they've never done is get an established veteran guy that wasn't, like, they got Odell, but he was done at that point. Like, you're right. They take a lot of shots in the draft on the receiver, but they haven't gone out and gotten a guy like Devontae. Like, that's where I thought Brew was going to
The A.J. Brown point, though, where he would get back together with Vrabel, where that makes a lot of sense is they've been together. And Vrabel knows what the dynamic will be on the room and what kind of value he adds. And if the head coach is comfortable with bringing in A.J. Brown, that to me makes a lot of sense. I just don't know what this dynamic will be like in Green Bay.
LaFleur coached Devontae.
I understand that. I just the Vrabel relationship with AJ,
that was better.
I feel more comfortable with.
Do you put any stock into the fact that Devontae seems to really value what's familiar? So when he left the Packers, he's like, I want to go play with my old quarterback from Fresno State. And then once that fell apart, he stuck with the Raiders until it was time to go to the Jets, who we all knew, we didn't think the Jets were good, but he wanted the familiar with Aaron Rodgers, which to me, and I don't, the coaching tree, it's like, actually, he was my receivers coach. I don't know how it's all spread out, but going somewhere brand new, I kind of take off the board. So that's why I lean towards not just the narrative, but the fact that he wants something familiar.
Yeah, I could see that. And Green Bay's a contender. Green Bay has with J-Lo, we'll see how good he gets, but it seems like he's emerging as a real viable, frontline quarterback. That all makes sense too. I just struggle with and I think he's a good guy from outside looking in.
Great actor.
But what effect does that have on all those young guys who are now growing together?
That's a fair point.
Yeah, I mean, I want to make that clear just before we move on to Shedeur. When I said I don't look at it as a mentor position, I'm not saying like Devontae is standoffish or would be a bad guy to them. I just think receivers look at receivers as competition for targets. It's why when Devontae went to the Jets, everyone was like, Garrett Wilson's going to love this. Coverage is going to move. I was like, I don't think Garrett Wilson's going to love this.
But one of the great things that Green Bay has right now is whoever's open, based off the coverage, he'll throw him the ball. It's not the pressure of like, we got to feed our star or he's going to be unhappy.
50 days away from the NFL draft, and there's a lot of action on the big boards. Shedeur slipping. Lance Zierlin's NFL mock has the Colorado Star dropping to the bottom of the first round, where the Browns would grab him in a fictitious trade with the Commanders. That's why he's at the bottom of the first round. Is anyone surprised Shedeur's slipping is becoming a storyline?
I mean, I'm not. I said it yesterday, I'll say it again. I think he's more likely to go in the 20s than in the top 5. And now there's a big gap between those two, 6 through 19. It would be, neither option. But I think that the media and maybe a few anonymous scouts and coaches are focused on his bravado. And I think the teams are focused on, do we think this guy is a day one NFL quarterback, or do we think he has, if he's not a day one NFL quarterback, high-level tools to be our franchise quarterback? And if you're drafted in the top 5 or even in the top 10, you're expected to start, if not day one, very quickly. You know what I mean? All of them did. Every single guy that was drafted, we had 6 first-round picks drafted. Every single one that was healthy started this year. Even Penix, by the end of the year. And so I just have real questions about Shedeur's ultimate upside as a quarterback, not the person. And so I think it is very likely that Cam Ward goes 1, 2, or 3, and another quarterback is not taken in the top 5, in the top 10, and it goes.
I think teams, too, I do think some teams are worried about Deion. Like we know there was that report about the Giants, and especially if they're not sure about Shedeur. Like if they're sure about him, they probably just overlook it. If you have questions about him, then you're probably worried about his dad being such a presence. But from years of covering the league, like I have great respect. This is all the major sports for the knowledge of the coaches, the front office, the scouts. I'm just covering the leagues. You learn that. Except like, and I'm not saying like this is the one area.
Drafting quarterbacks?
Yeah. And it's not because I don't think guys know what they're talking about. It's just such a, for lack of a better term, crapshoot. That's a little of an overstatement. But, I mean, guys loved, and Trevor may become something, but Trevor Lawrence, Jameis Winston, Sam Bradford.
Oh, Jameis.
And they didn't love Lamar and Jalen Hurts. Like, it's just, and I'm not even basing that on style of play or race or anything like that. But my point is just, it is a crapshoot with these quarterbacks. And, again, I know that's an overstatement. There are things you see. And I get it, you know, some of the tape, Shedeur does need to get rid of the ball faster and stuff like that. But what I do, when I watch him, my eye test tells me he hasn't had a great offensive line. He hasn't had a running game. He has had good receivers.
Really good.
But he has made stuff happen with some disadvantages. And I think I like what I see in him, and I think I think he may fall. But I think it'll be a mistake, and I think he'll be a good quarterback.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by the fall at all because this is the normal progression of the draft process. So this college season ends. There's all these mock drafts that come out. It's before really the coaches have gotten involved in the NFL draft process. It's before the draft process has really gotten rolling at all. So these guys are elevated initially, and then everybody starts digging in. The wheel starts rolling, and some guys are going to fall, and some guys are going to pop, whether it's Trey Lance, who pops up, or Zach Wilson, who pops up. And this year, there'll be some, 2 or 3 quarterbacks that pop up that you don't think should be there. And there's always the guy that falls. And it is a crapshoot. I respect what he's done. I think that the bravado to me is more confidence than arrogance. So I think that's positive. I think his dad is an asset, but I could see how a lot of coaches, especially coaches in vulnerable spots, could view that as a threat. So I get all of that stuff. But the good news for Shedeur is this happens every year. And just pull up this graphic. Here's 3 really good examples of guys who are projected to go high. Lamar goes 32, Aaron Rodgers goes 24, Big Ben goes 11. They all have really, really great careers. So whether you fall or don't fall, sometimes that's the best thing that can happen to a guy because they end up with a team that's much better prepared to let them either sit and watch, or they have a much better team so they're able to go out and truly show who they are than the guys who get drafted high to lousy teams that get beat up for a year or 2 before they can pop.
Like poor Trevor.
You're so down on Trevor.
I'm not down. His body, I'm worried.
He hasn't called him the Prince in like 11
kind of
months.
retired that. It's a bugler, sure, it's becoming cost prohibitive.